Hey, it's Jason Cunningham and welcome back to Save My Business, the podcast dedicated to helping small and medium-sized business owners navigate through the proverbial shitstorm. Today's guest is arguably this country's #1 financial advisor, my business partner and a very good friend of mine, and his name is Matt Morrison. G'day Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey Jace, thanks for having me mate, appreciate the opportunity to be here.
You're more than welcome, Matt, but I'm going to put you under the grill.
Sure.
but before I do that, I just want to put some context around today's conversation. I know the title of the podcast is Save My Business. Now, you're a business owner.
Yes.
We're in business together.
Yep.
And we're going to get to that. But I also want to talk about your take on the market.
Yes.
And just give you a little bit of pre-warning, but not too much. The impact that COVID's had on the market, where it's going. And look, a lot of people don't know this, but you're my advisor and have been for the last dozen years. And it's throughout that time I've been on SCN as the money guy and Triple M and also the living room. And what a lot of people don't know is you're the one that's feeding me all the information. Which is,
well, it's very much a team effort, Jay, over the years.
Yeah, you do the work and I talk about it. But look, what a lot of people don't know, Matt, is that you're an author in your own right. I want to talk about that.
Yes.
But I want to wind the clock back to the early years, if I can, Mr. Morrison. And
sure.
People that know you today know you as a clean-cut professional, a gentleman. You're quite intelligent, you're astute, you're level-headed. But as a young kid, your life wasn't that way. Do you want to share with me how you went through high school and how many schools you attended and all that sort of stuff?
Well, I attended a few, but yeah, it was very much a journey over the course of time. So look, way back when to primary school, started out way out in the burbs, out at South Warrandyte Primary. Yeah. It was very much almost like a not so much country, but almost like a country upbringing from that side of things. And I also remember out the back of our place when we lived in North Ringwood there. We lived off the back of a pretty much 100-acre forest. Oh wow! That myself and my older brother, 2 years older than me, we had the run of basically. So it was a fantastic upbringing. Basically, just jump over the back creek at the back of our backyard, and all of a sudden we're running around. There's wild horses, and we go camping and do whatever we want there. So it was an absolutely fantastic upbringing. Yep. And then I moved into a private secondary school with. Arguably a few too many rules for myself and my older brother and our general group of friends, and we didn't really respond too well to the strictness of the school. So when it came time, about 3 days into year 11, myself and three of my best friends were actually, in not so many words, asked to leave the school. Yeah. And that was interesting time in my life. But I also I went to another school where I just knew one person. Oh, wow. And it was a very challenging transition. I went to a school where my best friend happened to be there after moving a couple of years earlier. Yep. And that looking back was a really big learning curve of my life as well. Really the first time where I had to be 100% flexible and resilient and think on my feet in a brand new environment like that. Yeah. Because you're 11, what are you, 16 or 17? They're your formative years, and it's about being popular, meeting friends and getting to know people. So it's a challenging time. Absolutely, it was quite intimidating. I was 15 at the time. I was the second youngest in my year. So I went in there. I was 15, about to turn 16 in the April of year 11. Yeah. And so I was the second youngest, but also I found that quite intimidating at that time where, as you say, everyone's very cemented in their friendships. Yeah, of course. But looking back, I've always looked at that time as possibly the best learning curve of my entire life. It's often said, Matt, it's through adversity where our greatest learning comes. And at the time, we don't think it's a great learning experience. In actual fact, we wish we were back at the other high school before we... with all those rules. Yeah. I mean, you're the only bloke, you're the nicest bloke I know, Morrison, to be honest with you. And this is the way, I would have said, look, I got my ass kicked out of school, but you mentioned that 4 of you were moved on to greater places. So, look, there's a lot of people that we know mutually, not many of them know that story that you were kicked out in year 11. I forgot I even told you, quite frankly, but thanks for bringing it up. It was at one of our business planning retreats where we do all that work, where you might have been 1 or 2 beers and red wines in, Matt, where we gleaned a couple hours past midnight, possibly.
So you obviously went through school, did all right, went to university. I'm also intrigued and would like you to share the story about you overseas in London and the accident that you had.
Yeah, of course, and I think that was the next big learning stage of my life, where at the moment it was absolutely terrible in the moment, but looking back, it was a great learning time.
Yeah.
But just to share the story briefly, my wife and I moved to London.
You weren't married at the time, though?
No, we're engaged.
Yeah.
So we'd only been together for about 2 years at that point. We thought, you know what, we're going to move to London to have that as a base and travel before we come back to Australia and eventually settle down and have kids.
Yeah.
So it was mid-2007 that we moved over there. And about 6 months into our UK trip, I had a massive car accident in Oxford.
Yeah.
My wife had gone away to Paris to do a course, a language course, and I thought I'd just take off to Oxford for the weekend.
I think that's code for buying handbags.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. And I hired a little car from Thrifty or whoever it was at that time and took off to Oxford.
Yeah. And
I still vividly remember on Sunday morning driving around in Oxford. It was cold, it was icy.
Yeah.
And before I knew it, my car actually slid off the road and went headfirst into a tree. And my legs were absolutely shattered.
Yeah.
On top of a compound fracture, my right leg basically disintegrated into about 23 different pieces. And
wow.
I don't think I've shared with all the details about this, but
I'm wincing.
They had to cut me out of the car and airlift me to the local hospital for a while. They weren't sure whether I was actually going to make it.
Wow, Matt.
And I ended up having 3 blood transfusions, being in hospital, laying on my back for about 5 weeks, 7 or 8 operations. And I couldn't work for 12 months. And during that 12 months, I spent 6 months in a wheelchair while I learned how to walk again from scratch.
Oh.
All while being halfway around the world, where the only person there was my wife, and she was an absolute rock.
Yeah.
She really helped me get through emotionally,
yeah.
so I could focus on getting better physically.
Yeah, she is a great person, Rebel. She's beautiful.
She is.
Yeah,
she is.
Thanks for that story. You came back to Australia and found your way through various different. You found your way into the practice.
That's right. Yeah, about a month after I returned to Australia, actually.
Yeah, and we were very fortunate to pick you up, and then along the journey, we had some conversations, and you became a partner of our firm.
Yes.
And a director, a fellow shareholder.
Coming up to 10 years now.
Yeah, okay. Yes, that's surprised you made it that long. I mean, from your end, not ours. Yeah, so...
I still remember the first time we met each other, we were saying how much, it was scary how much you and I actually have in common. And I think that's one of the reasons why our relationship has worked so well over the 12 years, because we have shared a lot in common.
We have.
Don't always see the world the same way, but we share a lot of the principles and values.
And and absolutely, I concur with that. And there's nothing wrong with seeing the world differently. I think it's important. And one of the guiding principles that we enjoy here at work is that we celebrate the diversity that exists among us, and we actually celebrate that. And the fact that you and I and everyone here sees the world differently is a good thing, not necessarily a bad thing. Matt, there's a few more personal stories that we'll talk to, but you've seen your fair share of, as the head of wealth management and our head advisor and the lead in that space, you're pretty meticulous with the way you attack your advice and what you give to clients. And this is not necessarily an advertorial for the practice per se, but more to get to know you, but ask you some pretty rapid fire questions if I can. You've seen a couple of market crashes, and in March of 2020, that was some fun times for you and for our whole wealth team. How do you remain level-headed in that space when the world is flying? Correct me if I'm wrong, and I love rolling out a stat. They're not necessarily always accurate, but I reckon this Aussie market come off about 35%. Am I close?
Yeah, 35, 36.
Yeah. Yep. So it's actually 36, but you were gentle with the 35. So I reckon 35 is a good effort.
It depends on the day, because we saw just wild swings 12 months ago, and it was really even more violent swings than the GFC, which you and I went through 12, 13 years ago, there or thereabouts. But it was just an enormous volatility. But for the share market to drop somewhere between 35 to 38%, in the space of 5 weeks, and three of the worst days ever were during those 5 weeks, where the absolute panic gripped the world. And it was absolute panic, and no one knew what was really going on from that perspective, and no one really knew how bad the whole COVID situation was going to be. So it was absolute panic, and obviously that impacted the share markets initially, and then other markets later on.
I talk about, and I have on this podcast a couple of times, about the fact that typically it's the share market that's the leading indicator for the rest of the economy.
Yes.
And we, early doors, were fielding so many phone calls from our clients saying, oh my God, and what's happened to my investments, what's happened to my superannuation, my retirement nest egg, what's going on. And it sort of spoke to the human behaviour pattern that existed early doors in lockdown and COVID, that we were very much, as individuals and as people, we were very much inward focused, and what about me and what about my investments and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then we got really selfish again in the supermarkets when we were fighting over baked beans and toilet paper and 2-minute noodles.
It's terrible.
But then we evolved as a race, as mankind. We evolved and we started to share the load a lot. And I guess, it's typical human behaviour. We panic and we literally shit ourselves, and the market did the same thing. And then we sort of calmed down. But you, throughout that whole period, Matt, and there's a lot of people that worked a lot of hours, but you probably worked the most in that first sort of 8-week period. You have this innate ability to remain level-headed and at peace and calm. What do you put that down to, and that nature that you've got as a person?
Oh, okay, it's a really good question. I think first and foremost, not needing a lot of sleep naturally got me through that time. But no, look, I've always, ever since I was 17 or 18 years old, I've always focused on learning the psychology of, say, call it successful people or habits of successful people. And I never listened to the radio to and from work or
were you listening to SEN on the run home?
Of course, on Tuesday night. But always listen to podcasts or audio books or whatever it might be, and I'm always taking in information, but also just always learning from others. But it's really nothing is ever as good as it seems, and nothing is ever as bad as it seems.
Right.
So I guess learning in that situation, drawing from previous times where things haven't necessarily gone to plan, whether it be from a market perspective, whether outside business perspective, but really focus, okay, what can we actually control? And in that particular moment, I still vividly remember, it was almost 12 months ago now, the Monday was Labor Day in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And the Friday before was just when it started to get really bad, and this whole COVID thing was actually starting to make the news and look like it was quite serious. But that Monday we were shut for the Labor Day public holiday. That day the Australian share market fell by 7%.
Yeah.
And I knew, well, this is going to be bad and this is serious. And so the next day, I'm usually an early riser, as you know.
4:30.
I sleep in a bit now to 5 a.m. but that particular day, the Tuesday, I said, clients, they need to hear from us straight away.
Yeah.
And that particular day, I got up at 3 a.m.
Of course you did.
And by 8 a.m., every client that I'm the lead advisor for heard from me personally.
Yeah, wow.
About don't panic, hold fire.
Yeah.
We've already made sure that your investments are suitable for you, suitable for your time frame. You're not taking too much risk or too little risk.
Yeah.
And we heard back, and we just continually communicated with our clients, especially throughout those first several weeks when the panic was really striking the overall market. But the other advisors really did the same thing that day.
Yeah.
So every client that's on an ongoing package and that we manage money for heard from us within 24 hours after that, and got that reassurance that what they're doing is right for them and no one else. And every single client, bar one client had to sell part of their portfolio because they needed the money.
Yep.
But every single other client except for one hung on throughout that whole period of time. And now things have actually bounced back to where they were 12 months ago.
I know my portfolio's in front. Yeah.
So quite often it's more just actually staying calm, focus on the things you can control.
Yeah.
But also like any sort of adversity like that is be prepared for it before it happens, because it's not necessarily a matter of if, but it's when.
Yeah, that's right.
Be prepared for setbacks.
I guess that's one of the things I was going to say. The way you set up the portfolios is it's quite a diverse investment, and I don't want to get too deep into this, right?
No, I agree.
I don't, but that if one sector, like for example, the travel sector, they got hit pretty hard, so you're not too deep in that, and so the portfolio is set up right from the start. What I do want to talk to you about is your daily habits.
Yes. Great.
And I find that intriguing. You're one of the leaders in our organisation. I was going to say arguably, not arguably, without doubt, you're the most level-headed leader we've got in our business. And we need that at times. Yeah. Sometimes more often than not.
That's where we compliment each other quite well, Jay.
There's no need to have a crack at me. Tell me this, Morro. What are the daily habits? You spoke about it earlier. Driving in the car on the way to work, you listen to audiobooks and podcasts and all that sort of stuff. What are the daily habits that you participate and practice every day that puts you in the right frame of mind and the right state to behave the way that you behave?
Yeah, absolutely. There's 3 or 4 key things.
Yep.
That I'm quite a structured person.
You don't say.
But I've always been, as I alluded to before, I've always been an early riser. So I really put a lot of focus on daily exercise.
Yep.
I think actually doing daily exercise, whether it be going to the gym, whether it be doing other things, that's so linked to not only mental health, but also the way you actually turn up and deliver at work or in a business setting. Really, I do whatever I can to be at my best on every single day. So it comes down to exercise.
So before that, sorry, you get up every morning at?
Now I sleep into 5 a.m.
5 a.m.
But prior to this year, virtually every year for the previous decade, I'd get up at 4 a.m. And be at the gym when I used to physically go to a gym, go to the gym at 4:30 a.m.
Yes.
And there'd be the usual suspects there. 3 or 4 people were there every single day.
Yeah.
And we got to know each other quite well. But I'd always go to the gym first thing in the morning. When COVID hit and gyms shut, I invested the time and energy to turn my garage into a commercial grade gym.
Of course you did, because Matt Morrison doesn't do anything in halves. He does them in 1.5s.
So there's exercise bike, there's rowing machine, there's Smith machine, there's a couple of boxing bags, and it's all decked out really, really well. But that comes down to as well that invest the time and money and the energy. If you're going to do something, do it properly.
Matt, I'm going to jump in. I introduced you to a lifelong client of mine who became a client of our wealth advisory business, Peter Cook, and how I just want to share this with our listeners as to the interest in the story and how you won Peter Cook over as a client was not through your investment strategy or your holistic approach to diversifying your investments and how to own a property inside a self-managed fund or any of that shit. What won him over was when you said to him that you get up every morning at 4 a.m. to go to the gym, but today, because you and I played golf that morning, I don't know if you remember, you got up at 3 a.m, went to the gym, then went to the golf course. And you beat me to the golf course.
I was sitting there waiting for you. Let's have a coffee.
See, most people would say, okay, I exercise every morning and I do this and I get up and go to the gym. And so therefore I'm playing early morning golf with Jason. I'm going to call that my exercise. You don't do that.
I believe in keeping promises to yourself and others.
Yeah.
And what I believe in amongst a whole range of things, one of the most critical elements is doing what you say you're going to do.
Yeah. That's the definition of authenticity, isn't it? Really?
That's right, and integrity.
Yeah.
And so I vividly remember that time I committed to going to the gym 100 days in a row.
That's right.
I was a bit unfit at that stage and wanted to get in really peak fitness. So 100 days in a row, I had something on that night.
Yeah.
So if I was going to be authentic to myself, I had to actually get up that time. Good thing the gym was 24 hours.
Yeah.
So, but from getting back to say habits and daily, absolutely it's exercise.
Yeah.
But it's also really focused now on eating well. It's funnily enough the Donna Aston podcast that you did a little while ago. I listened to that, and straight away I joined her program. And this is not an ad for that program, but that's been absolutely life changing from that perspective. So it's really focused on exercise, eating well, and sleep.
Yeah.
And really take care of your health and well-being. And the better we all are, and the healthier we all are, both mentally and physically, the better we're able to deliver and add value to the world around us, whether it be in business, whether it be at home, whether it be the broader community. If we're constantly running ourselves down and on the verge of burnout, which I have been many times over the years, working too many hours.
Yeah.
But I really find that's not sustainable.
Yeah. And
over the last year in particular, I've realised just how crucial it is to look after ourselves first. And that's not selfish. That's been really unselfish. but looking after ourselves first, so we're actually able to add more value to the world around us.
Well, I guess it's like the analogy when you're on a plane, and you've got a kid sitting next to you. They say put the face mask on yourself first before
exactly.
you put it on there. I mean, I know a few blokes out there that be looking to smother their kids with a pillow. No,
and the other habit, Jace, just to add on to that, is lifelong learning. As I alluded to before, once again, the other daily habit, I'm always taking in new ideas.
Yeah.
And once again, whether it be audiobooks, whether it be podcasts, whether it be listening and reading. But I heard many years ago from a mentor, Brian Tracy. Never met the great man, but he's been a great mentor for me from afar over time. And something really stuck with me. He said, you know what, turn your car into a university on wheels.
Yeah, right.
Never listen to the radio.
Yeah.
Or apart from when you're on there, of course. So from a very early age, once again, as soon as podcasts and audiobooks were available, my phone is full of audiobooks. So whether I'm in the gym in the morning or driving to and from work or driving to and from somewhere else, I'm always listening, always learning. And that's been a great habit that's really stood me in good stead.
I think his name is Charlie Tremendous Jones once said, you'll be the same person you are today in 5 years' time, except for the books you read and the people you meet.
Yes.
Now that was said quite some time ago before audiobooks.
Yes.
So let's go through your daily habits. You're up at 5 a.m. It used to be 4 a.m. You allow yourself, you flirt with the idea of sleeping in till 5. So you're part of the 5 a.m. club.
Yep.
You regimentally exercise every day.
Yes.
You fuel your body with the right food.
Yes.
And you're continuously training your mind.
Yeah.
So that puts you in a good frame of mind and a good mental state and a good physical state to add value to the world around you, whether that be your clients, the team members, the people that look up to you at work, which is every single one of us, whether it's your wife, your friends and your kids.
Yep, exactly right.
Okay, so Mr. Morrison, Mr. Authenticity, never do something never don't do something that you say you're going to do it. So do you do that 7 days a week?
Oh, no, I don't think any of us should be disciplined 7 days a week. You need to give yourself a day off or at least a night off. So also structure it that Friday night, absolutely. I love a red wine.
Yes, you do.
As you know. So every single Friday night, my wife and I enjoy a nice bottle of red wine. We get takeaway, we have movie night, so the kids get to choose whatever we have. So absolutely, it's fish and chips or pizza. Yeah. Which I love.
No, you love pizza. I remember being away on that director's retreat where you ordered about 7 pizzas.
Well, you know what, you can't be disciplined all the time. Yeah. But also it's getting back to similar things like treating yourself along the way but it's also making sure that you allow flexibility in any routine or whatever it might be, because if we try to be disciplined on everything absolutely 100% of the time, it really also reduces the motivation over time. So look, I just find it works for me, and also know when I don't do that on a regular basis and do it consistently, that's when things don't go as well, or I don't perform as well as I otherwise would.
Matt, one of the things that I think is a gift of yours is your ability not to listen to outside noise and get distracted. And a couple of weeks ago, I interviewed Xavier Campbell, CEO of the Essendon Footy Club. I've spoken to Cameron Swab and David Schwartz, football identities, and I talk about some of the parallels that can be drawn from elite sporting clubs and shared with small and medium-sized business owners. And one of the things that elite sporting clubs do really well is they don't listen to the outside noise. And I see that in you. A lot of people would say, what are you doing getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning for? Why don't you have a sleep in? Or why don't you have a hamburger every now and then? You have the ability, a great knack of not listening to that. What do you put that down to? That having that inner strength not to listen to the outside noise?
Look, I've always been a journaler. I'm not sure if I've shared that with you, but ever since...
I've read your journals. Sure, the ones when you were 15.
They're in my fireproof safe. Unless you know the code, you wouldn't be able to read them. But I put that down to as well. I do a lot of thinking on paper. Yeah. And I also, I'm naturally an introvert. And so I recharge by being alone. And I recharge by being in silence. And so I've always relished that time alone, once again, whether it be first thing in the morning, whether it be last thing at night, whether it be carve out time on the weekend where I'm actually just by myself.
Yeah.
And quite often I'm a member at RACV club, so quite often I drive out to Hillsville, have a swim out there, and just sit in the members area there and just really recharge or read or whatever it might be.
Yeah, there's a good view out there onto the golf course.
It's beautiful, good thinking view.
Yeah.
And I really put that down to that time alone to think and centre myself, and also focus on what's truly important, and once again the things I can control, the things I can't control, and knowing how to choose the difference.
Yeah.
But I really put down a lot of my mental state, whatever that might be, to the time I actually spend by myself, recharging and thinking. And because a lot of people say who are extroverts, say for instance with yourself and others, who might recharge by actually being around groups. I'm the opposite. I love people, and I love being in groups, but I also find I need to recover by being alone after being in those environments.
It's interesting you say that, and a lot of people think I'm an extrovert. I'm actually an introvert that has extrovert characteristics, and so I sort of swing between both. I love the energy I can get from a room or when I speak to an audience. I love that energy. It's fantastic. But gee, I really enjoy being on my own and being quiet.
And that's probably how you recharge then.
That's exactly right. Matt, so there's a lot of rituals that are going on, and one of them is recharging, being on my own. I know you're a huge family man. Your wife, Rebelle's a beautiful woman.
Yes.
Kids are gorgeous. William and Emily. Yeah, Emily or Emily? Emily. So let's just make sure that we got Emily right the first time. Let's pretend that we did. No, she's a gorgeous young girl. The kids are about 8 and 6. Around that.
9 and 7, grade 4.
There we go.
Grade 4 and grade 2.
I'm still in last year.
Time's flying by.
What about time with them? How do you go spending time with your family?
Yeah, you know what? It's the most important time during the week, and getting back to structure and scheduling. Not that we scheduled time together, but it's really dedicated. Weekends are all about family. Weekends are all about, in particularly, time with my kids.
Yeah.
So, and my wife and I have a good arrangement. I'm not gonna,
I don't know if we're going to go there.
So to speak, but look, she loves golf. My wife, so she actually plays golf every Saturday and every Sunday. Yeah. Some would say she's addicted, Jace. Yeah. But it's good to see all the time she's putting into it. She's actually getting pretty good.
Well, it's interesting.
It's not going to waste.
Didn't you introduce her to the sport of golf?
I did a decade ago.
And now she's a way better golfer than you.
She's actually the golfer in the family.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's interesting.
But you know what? It works because she's off playing golf. And gets up early on a Saturday and Sunday, and I get to hang out with my kids. So I take my kids to karate on a Sunday. At the moment they do swimming also, but then we go off to the zoo or we go off to the aquarium or go off and do an activity. And ever since Emily was young, she's now 9, but ever since she was about 6 months old, Saturday was me and the kids, and now it's Saturday and Sunday with the kids, and then William came along. So we have that dedicated time together. Yeah. And you know what, we'll never get that back. Yeah. So pretty much Saturday and Sunday I actually carve out to be with them, and then when my wife gets home from golf at 3 p.m.
Yeah. And you rub her feet for her.
Of course. No, we cross over.
Yeah. Okay. Tag.
Yeah, we tag. Yeah. So my wife hangs out with the kids, and then we tag, and I have that 3 or 4 hours to do my own thing. Yeah. Whether it be exercise or read or learn or catch up with friends and just recharge. So we've got a good arrangement. Yeah. But it's really, we've got that structure that we know who's doing what when, and I know that this time on the weekend, it's all about the kids. And that's not negotiable. Yeah. You're a person that I, as I've mentioned already, I admire and I look up to, and I think there's a lot of learning that comes from you. One of your greatest traits is your ability to show others respect, and you have the utmost respect for your wife, and she does for you, and the love that she shows for you, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. I don't want to get too soppy too early doors. I want to jump around all over the place. Sure. Where am I going to invest my money, big boy? No, look, a lot of people have been waiting to hear that from you. Yeah. And so I know that there's various different rules and regulations around providing specific and only general advice and all that sort of stuff, and disclaimers all over the place. Yes. And Chev will put a disclaimer everywhere, and you don't need to get nervous, and I don't need the compliance manager to ring me. What I'm saying is this. You and I share a few things in common. Number one, we are both boys. Tick. Number 2, we are both partners of this firm. Tick. Yes. Number 3, we are both financial advisors. Tick.
One of us is not allowed to give advice, and that's not you, right? Number 4 is we're both authors, and I want to talk about your book a little bit later on. Some would say that the foreword to that book is arguably one of the best forewords ever written.
No, I'd agree.
No, but seriously, what you are is you're a man that's authentic, and you will only ever give advice based on your experience, not your opinion. So there's a lot of people listening, and you and I agree that typically for most of us, the more we earn, the more we spend, and the best way to get ahead is take money off ourselves,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
We agree to that,
yeah.
and we've built a cash flow calculator together that we share with our clients, and we'll say that if you've got $1,000 in your wallet, you'll probably spend it. If there's only 900, you'll only spend 900. So give me that 100 and let's put it somewhere else, and we'll talk about how we structure it.
Yes.
That's pretty much investment 101.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, the foundations.
The foundations. Cash flow is king. You've got to earn some brass to be able to invest it. The problem is, as I had my meditation teacher on a couple of weeks ago on this podcast, and he said to me, Jason, stress and mindfulness is like making money. And I'm like, what? And then here's a guy trying to relate to me, and he said, look, it's like this. It's not so much how much you earn, it's how much you spend.
Yes.
And he spoke about that, about stress and your energy. And I thought, Steve, that's really interesting. It's not how much you earn, it's how much you spend. And we've seen clients come in here that earn $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 a year that can't get by because the more money they earn, the more they spend.
They spend it all and a bit more besides. And you know what studies have shown that 81% of people actually spend everything they earn, and 9% of people actually spend more than they earn through credit cards and personal loans.
That's interesting, and we all love a stat. Whether it's true or not, it's another story. But this would be true because it's coming out of the lips of Matt Morrison. So tell me that again.
81% of people spend everything that they earn.
Wow.
And 9% of people spend more than they earn.
Oh, because of credit cards and debts and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's frightening.
And look, that was from a study done by one of the banks 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So it may have changed a little bit, but I don't think it would have changed too much.
Well, let's say it's about bang on.
Yeah.
Because the banks are very legitimate with a lot of integrity. No, I'm taking the piss. But so about 80% of us spend everything that we earn, and about 10% spend more than we earn.
Yes.
And herein lies the inherent danger when we listen to outside noise. Now, what I mean by that is that typically people, they know their friends and family from schools or from the community they live in, and he's making money, he drives a Mercedes, and he's got a double-storey house, and he's got a pool, he must be making money. But you and I both know, that's right, that 80% of us spend everything that we earn, and another 10% could be overs.
Yeah.
And so when you listen to outside noise, and you taught me this, Matt Morrison, I just came to my mind just then. You said to me, Jason, don't necessarily worry too much about the world economy, worry about your own economy. Did I quote you correctly?
Right. Yeah, just focus on your own personal economy.
Yeah.
And make sure what you're doing is right for you and nobody else.
Yeah, right. So then what's the typical stance that you take if a person comes in and wants to have a conversation with you and they want to know where to invest their money or whatever? What's the process that you go through in how you communicate that to said customer and providing them with some advice?
Well, it's more about understanding the actual client, understanding what's important to them, understanding where they're at now, but ultimately also what they want to achieve longer term. Investments, as you know, are just one piece of the overall puzzle. But it's been said, actually, Roy Disney, who's Walt's brother, said that when your values are clear to you, decisions become easier.
Wow.
And the same is true with financial decisions. So I'm all about helping clients align their financial decisions with their most important goals and their most deeply held values. So quite often investments are actually a part two of the conversation or the second conversation.
Yeah.
It's more about getting clear for what do clients actually want to achieve? Why do they want to achieve it? Why is it actually important to them? What's important about their finances and money and their lifestyle to them? Then it's really helping clients get as clear as possible on that.
Yeah.
Then it really helps make the decisions easier and how to go about achieving those goals and plans over the course of time, whether it be building towards longer term freedom or whatever it might be. But from an investment point of view, I've got a certain philosophy from that point of view, and there's a whole chapter in my book around where should you actually invest your money. Yeah. And I don't think that anyone should rely on one particular way of doing anything.
Why is that?
Because what if they went down one particular avenue, choose one particular option, whether it be property, whether it be shares, whether it be
tipping it all into super.
CFDs, or it'd be tip it all into
Gold.
super, or put it all in cash. What if they choose one particular option or one particular road, and that one particular option ends up being the worst option of all options available?
Well, like you look at it, you go back 10 years and cash was a great return, and now today the cash rate's 0.1%.
It's nothing. It's nothing. Whereas it wasn't too long ago, it was actually 8%.
Yeah.
And so from that point of view, and generally from that perspective, I think every single client should really focus on, say, having a good amount in property, but also a good amount in the share market, that they're actually taking money off themselves and paying themselves first, and some sort of a regular investment into the broader share market. But also to focus on superannuation as part of an overall financial strategy. Yeah. But you and I both know the rules will keep changing. So no one should just focus on that.
Yeah.
But it's also look at other things like cash and a buffer and expecting setbacks.
Yeah.
And once again, be prepared for them when they do come along.
Let me talk about expecting setbacks, Matthew, and I'm just going to bounce around all over the place.
Sure.
Just to keep myself entertained and the number of different personalities that I'm having conversations with right now. Your ability to deal with adversity is one of your greatest strengths, if you ask me. But the problem with someone like you is you've got so many fucking strengths, it's hard to keep them all in one basket. But the period that was COVID, lockdown, Corona, a lot of people did it real tough. A lot of people did it tough because they were in a relationship that they were struggling with at home, and that forced that relationship upon them, and things popped out the other side. A lot of people couldn't deal with the ambiguity about where I'm working and all that sort of stuff. A lot of people couldn't deal with change. And one of the things that you're consistent with is that you wake up every morning at 5 o'clock and you exercise, and you're all about recharging your batteries. And you go off and you recharge your batteries on a Saturday, and you go for a mountain bike ride. You come off your bike, you slid down a hill, go headfirst into a pylon, and you fracture your neck.
Yeah.
And you get knocked out, passers by calling the paramedics, they send you off to the Alfred, you're on your back for 10 days in a hospital bed, not knowing if you're ever going to walk again.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of COVID, your family can't come into the hospital to see you, you're lying on your back for 9 or 10 days, you've got an amazing, it was a great looking head brace, a halo. You had a fucking halo beforehand, but this is
It scared a lot of kids at the park walking around Mitcham, I'll tell you what.
Yeah, that screwed into your skull. And I remember I had a phone call on the Sunday morning from a number I didn't have in my phone, and they left a voicemail, and I listened to it, and it was Rebel, your wife.
Yes.
And I shit myself when I rang her, and mate, you were meant to have that neck brace on for 12 weeks. I think it ended up being 17 or 18 weeks.
Yeah, it was 14 weeks.
Yeah, I don't mind adding a little bit of mayonnaise onto the story. So you had the neck brace on for 7 years. No, so 14 weeks you had it on for. That would have felt like an eternity.
Actually screwed into my head, physically screwed into my head.
Yeah, Frankenstein sort of behaviour, bolts in there.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. One would argue it's not that easy to slip a T-shirt over a halo.
It's impossible, actually.
Yeah. So you've got all those oversized tracksuit tops. Every time I spoke to you, Matt, whether it was a director's meeting on a Zoom or on a Teams meeting, or just had conversations, you're upbeat and positive. You could have lost your life. You could have died. And I spoke to, Dan McPherson, a few of our clients, mates are cyclists. Dan McPherson told me when he found out he was shattered, and he said that he had mates that had died.
Yeah.
So you could have died.
Yeah.
You could have ended up being a quad or a paraplegic.
Yeah.
You could see your family for 9 or 10 days. One of the most scariest times of your life where you have no idea. There's no certainty. Yet you remain upbeat and positive. How did you manage to do that? And is there anything that you can share with me and our listeners as to what to do in situations like that?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to take you through it. And look, there's no doubt about it that first week, in particular the first 4 days, where everything was completely and utterly uncertain. As you know, as you say, I really didn't know whether or not there was going to be any permanent spinal damage.
Yeah. And
it's one of those moments where we've all kind of been through to a certain extent, where that moment where everything you've been working hard for, it feels like it's been ripped out from under you, and life change basically overnight or had the potential to actually change overnight from that point of view. And
you would have had thoughts about being in a wheelchair, surely, and all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I thought life was never going to be the same ever again from that point on. And as you know, it was just one of those freak accidents. I wasn't doing anything too risky. It was a family-friendly bike track. It was just one of those things that happened. And lying on my back in the Alfred Hospital for 3 or 4 days until there was a clear outcome in regard from the MRI and CT scans and those types of things. And from that time, there was plenty of tears, let me tell you. And I think you and I were on the phone. I was on the phone to another colleague, and I don't mind saying I was in tears. Because I really wasn't sure exactly what was going to happen and what the future held. But I still vividly remember it was a Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday evening after the accident happened on the Saturday, and the doctors came in and said, "Good news, there's no spinal damage. You've clearly fractured your C7 vertebrae, which is the base of the neck, and it was bad."
Yeah, right.
And they weren't really telling me the full story. I think they were keeping it from me. But from that moment onwards, I was incredibly grateful and appreciative that, you know what, I've been given another chance. I've been given another chance to walk. I've been given another chance to live as normal. And so from that point on, I knew there was going to be a really long journey. And I've only just come out of it now. That was 5 months ago, nearly 6 months ago. But I've only really just got to the point where I feel, you know what, I'm pretty much 100% now. But it was a 4 or a 5 month journey. But one thing from that point of view, getting back to, I think on paper, I do a lot of writing. As soon as I got out of hospital, I sat down and I just captured all my thoughts at that moment on paper. And there's 5, getting back to your question, 5 key questions were just burning in my head. And first and foremost, question 1, what's the reality? And I think too often, sometimes we get overly negative or even overly positive about the situation. So I wrote down, what's the reality? What's the actual reality of the situation?
What was the answer to that?
The reality is, I'm badly injured, and it's going to be a long road back, and it's going to be a lot of blood, sweat and tears to actually recover. It's going to be a lot of frustrations over the time, but you know what? I will recover. I will recover 100%. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
And there's no spinal damage. There's no permanent damage. So that's the reality. It's bad. I'm injured, but I'm going to get 100% better. And question number 2 was, what can I be grateful for?
Yeah, wow.
And that actually kept me going during the bad times. You know what? I'm grateful that I've been given another chance, and it could have been so much worse. But question number 3 is, what meaning can I find? What's the meaning in this? And it kind of comes back to a few of the things we were talking about before. The meaning is, health and well-being, mental and physical, is just absolutely critical, and that needs to be a number 1 priority. And question number 4, getting back to say what all people have been through over the last 12 months, is what are you actually going to do about it?
Yeah, right.
And so when I was writing that, I think in one of my mentors over time was a guy by the name of W. Mitchell. And he wrote a book.
His first name's W?
His first name's W. I don't think he liked first name, so he just went by W. Mitchell. But if for any listeners, buy his book, grab his book online. It's called The Man Who Would Not Be Defeated. And I won't even go into his journey, but it's an incredible journey. Yeah. And it is all about, doesn't matter what happens to you, it's what you do about it that makes the difference. Yeah, right. And I thought, okay, what am I going to do about it? Yeah. But also question number 5 is, what support do I need, or what support do we need? Because no one should go through challenges all on their own. And having my wife and family and you and the other partners, and just broadly all colleagues really step in and rally around me. It's amazing.
I got to say, Matt, I sometimes tongue-in-cheek say that you're arguably this country's greatest advisor. I actually genuinely mean that. I genuinely mean that.
Thanks, Jason. It's very subjective, though, and it's almost impossible to measure, but I do appreciate the sentiment.
But anyway, I've said it, and it's on a podcast, so it's fucking
It must
real.
be true.
But, one of the gifts, and thank you for sharing that, Matt. I haven't gone into that much detail about your accident and those 5 things that you wrote down. I mean, Rebel, your relationship with Rebel, I reckon she's just a real champion chick.
Cheers.
Champion chick. Champion. Your kids are gorgeous. I remember at your book launch, your kids, daughter's such a cute little, gorgeous-looking girl, and young Will is a handsome, intelligent young man, and I can see the man that he's going to grow into. He's packed full of potential, this young boy, and he just doesn't realise what he's got.
Thank you.
But it's going to come, right? And your folks there, you see, I argue that we are a product of our family of origin.
Yeah,
and then,
very much.
And then from that, you've morphed into your own family of creation, and you got a blended, the master race here of kids, which is awesome. But another huge thing that happened was the impact on our team. And every single person in our organisation was really genuinely concerned about you. And you're such a strong leader in our business, but when the leader was forced from, as a forced absenteeism for you, there's some people that genuinely stood up.
Yeah,
genuinely stood up. And one of our lead advisors, Scotty Pantlin, really stepped up.
He sure did.
And you had a sore neck and you were lying on your back for a while, but shit, that did a lot for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's really, he's been through his challenges like we all have, all right? But he's come out the other side as he's a better advisor for it, ironically as that sounds. I'm not in a hurry because the universe is doing her very best to stop you from walking, right? You get in a car accident when you're in London, you're falling off your push bike. Seriously, man, I'm going to wrap you in a freaking bubble, right?
Well, I've retired from bike riding.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yes, let's not bungee jump, skydive, or any of that sort of crazy behaviour. So, for the bloke who works harder than any man that I know, sleeps less than most people, drinks more coffee than another, so
although no more after midday, thanks to Donna Aston.
Yeah, but before listening to Donna Aston, I mean, I want everyone to think about this. So the guy is practically broken his neck, lying in bed for a week and a bit, not knowing what's going to happen. Wears a halo, full on, screwed into his head for 14 weeks. Listens to Donna Aston podcast. Does the Aston RX diet, dropped
7 kilos.
7 kilo. When you're allowed to feel sorry for yourself and eat donuts tomorrow, you're smacking down kale for breakfast, getting in better shape than you were before the accident. I mean, you're an enigma. I find you're such a gift to mankind.
Well, I knew I needed to do that because I knew that if I didn't look after physical well-being, mental well-being could really spiral during those times of adversity. So I focused more than ever. On making sure I did those things. Yeah,
absolutely. And as we finish up, it would be remiss of me not to touch on the fact that you've written your own book.
Yeah.
And the perfectionist that you are, I'm very confident that you would have rewritten that a good dozen times. It took you quite some time, and every single word, every syllable, every punctuation mark is spot on. What gave you the impetus to write a book? Tell us about it. How do I get a copy of it? I know how I get a copy of it. I've already got a few.
Office.
Yeah, not walk into your office. But tell us about the book and how I get a copy of it and stuff.
Yeah, of course. Look, the book is called Freedom, Lifestyle and Legacy. And 5 years ago now, I set myself a goal to write a book. And as you know, I've told you previously that I set myself a 12-month goal to write and publish a book. I thought, how hard could it be? 12 months is heaps of time.
Yeah.
But it was a 3.5-year journey.
Yeah.
And I gradually chipped it away, writing one blog at a time, and gradually that blog became a book from that perspective. But also, I wanted to be part of my purpose.
Yeah.
And part of my personal purpose, at least professionally, is to very much help as many people as possible create freedom and exceptional lifestyles while also building a legacy of generational wealth. And you know what? The only way we can do that is actually put all of our ideas down on paper, whether it be book, whether it be videos or whatever it might be. I'd also learn from you. You're definitely one of my mentors.
Oh, thanks, mate.
And you had written 2 books at that time. You'd written one, and you're partway through your second one. I thought, I want to do what you have done, and at least have that as legacy, and also for my kids to see, what Dad wrote a book.
Yeah.
But it's also capture all your ideas down on paper. And it was very much a wonderful journey, and I self-published it, so I was involved every step of the way.
Yeah, as true Matt Morrison style.
even down to the cover. You know what? We ran a worldwide competition
I was part of that
99 designs, and worked with the designers on developing the cover, and it's something I'm enormously proud of.
Yeah.
And I figured, unlike you writing 2 books, you know what? I'm only ever going to write one.
I'm not fucking doing this again.
And if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it properly.
Yeah.
And enormously proud of that. But what I'm most proud of is hearing back from people who have read it. Just the other day, a new client reached out from Darwin. Had no other clients in Darwin up until now. That reached out from Darwin. That actually saw the book. It was the Money magazine book of the month in April last year, just as the COVID storm was starting to hit. And she picked up the book and read it, and now has actually reached out for advice from that perspective. So it's wonderful to hear the value that clients are actually, not even clients, but readers are actually getting from that.
Yeah, it's a good
feeling. I didn't write it as advertising our business or whatever it might be. I wrote it to give readers a blueprint to be able to do it all themselves and not necessarily rely on others.
And I think that's the most important aspect of it. Sure, it's a bit of a legacy thing and show our kids, and it's part of your purpose, but the greater benefit is that not everybody can afford your advice. Not everybody's in a position to warrant or justify spending the money to get the value that you provide. And you're giving those people the opportunity to get some financial advice that's available to everyone.
Yes.
Matt, I'm going to have to leave it there, if that's okay with you. I don't want too much of the attention or spotlight to go on you. I want it just to come back here for a little bit. Now, I'm going to leave it there, Matt. I will say this from the bottom of my heart. You're one of the most genuine people that I know.
Thank you, Jace.
I'm very grateful to be in your company and to be in business with you. And
likewise yours.
Yeah, thanks, mate. A lot of us look up to you, and I really think that you are a natural-born leader, and I hope and I'm positive that a lot of people listening to this podcast will get more out of this than they thought they would. And so, Matt Morrison, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks for having me.